Here we go. Week 8 of the National Football League. Of course, last week I went 8-5 in the money line, putting me at 69-37 early on in this NFL season for 7 weeks. 2 for 5 in best bets, 21 for 35 on the year. Again, I would like that to be a little bit higher. This week, once again, same as last week. I don't love the lines. Some very tricky lines. I think the money line picks are easier. The question is, will the team cover or not? Which I don't like a lot of the lines this week. So I went with smaller lines, and I went with teams / quarterbacks / coaches I trust more than others in these games. So without further ado, these are my week 8 NFL money line predictions and best bets. Tampa at Buffalo. Buffalo favored by 8.5. Listen, is there a chance the Bills come out and they absolutely blow the doors off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they're mad the way they lost to New England? It's a short week. They'll bounce back against a pretty banged up Tampa secondary. Absolutely. There is a world, where Buffalo gets back to that running game. Even though Tampa's been pretty good against the run this year, Josh Allen finds Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, who got going last week against New England, and that high-powered Buffalo offense overwhelms Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Baker over the last couple of weeks struggled against the Lions, struggled against Atlanta at home. We know Thursday night, short week. This is a game where Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in my opinion, become dangerous. And if their defense can force a couple turnovers off Josh Allen, who we know can be incredibly wild, this will be a close game. I think the Bills win it. Again, I think there's a possibility of a blowout. I'm not going to predict it. I'm staying away from betting the game. Next game, Eagles at Commanders. Now, I'm not going to bet against my team not to cover, but if I wasn't a Philadelphia Eagles fan, this would probably be, honestly, the play of the week, the Commanders side of it, plus 6.5. I said it when these two teams went head-to-head in week 4. I'm going to bring on Austin Arnold on tomorrow's show. We're going to discuss. He's a huge Commanders fan. We're going to break this game down in, all of its little nuances, if you will. But Washington knows how to play the Philadelphia Eagles. But at the same time, the Eagles, all they do seemingly if they lose is beat themselves. But you have to be able to run the football. You have to be able to control clock. You have to be able to get pressure on Jalen Hurts and force a couple turnovers. And again, run the ball 2-3 yards at a time and execute with touchdowns in the red zone. It seems like Washington does have the formula potentially. They know what to do against the Eagles. The question is, can they finish? There was a bad Sam Howell game last week against the New York Giants. We've seen great Sam Howell. Then we've seen bad Sam Howell, back and forth. A lot like Baker Mayfield. Again, we saw bad Sam Howell against the Giants. We saw bad Sam Howell week 3 against Buffalo. What did he do? Week 4, he bounced back, played very well against Philly in Philly. Eagles are starting to get some secondary help. Kevin Byard will make his Eagles debut. I still think this is a close game. I think it's likely if Philadelphia covers, it's maybe by a half a point. They win by a touchdown. Again, if I wasn't an Eagles fan, I would take the Washington side of it. But I think no matter what, Philadelphia finds a way to pull out the victory. Next game, Rams at Cowboys. Dallas coming off a bye. We don't know how they're going to look. Again, there is a scenario here. The Rams defense is not that good. And for all this talk about the Rams could be a sneaky playoff team, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't think the Rams, to be honest with you, are a very good football team. I think they're led by Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. It's all on the offense side of the ball. Aaron Donald has not had a very good year because he's being double-teamed constantly. Dallas has been completely in the media over the last couple of weeks, people calling them frauds. Micah Parsons has not had the tremendous year that we've expected him to have. Still good, but not, on Micah Parsons level great. Against a bad Rams offensive line, Dallas's very good defensive line could dominate this game, but we know it's Dallas. We know we can't trust them. So in the end, I think the Cowboys win. I'm not sure if they cover, so I'm staying away from the line. Next game. Not only am I going to best bet this game, Jets -3 against the New York Giants. But this is going to be my survivor pool pick this week in my survivor week. I think the Jets defense is just going to overwhelm Tyrod Taylor, who I believe is still going to start. Even if it is Daniel Jones, that'll be even better for the Jets. Listen, I know you think I'm crazy. The Jets cannot move the ball. Zach Wilson has played better, which is still below average for quarterback play. But the Giants don't have many weapons. They barely beat the Commanders last week, who their defense and secondary is not very good. The Giants have not looked good all year. The Giants cannot score points. And I think the Jets defense, which I saw them, go toe-to-toe with Kansas City. I saw them force 3 ill-advised turnovers against the Eagles and beat the Eagles a couple weeks ago. The Jets defense steps up. They get to Daniel Jones. They knock off the Giants or Tyrod Taylor, whoever the quarterback is. Jets win this game. They cover the 3 points. Now, New England at Miami is a very interesting game because people are saying Miami is frauds. So what does that tell you? They played week 2. Mike McDaniel's going to come out. Tyreek Hill's going to have a lot of yards. Jalen Waddle's going to have a lot of yards. Miami is going to stop New England. The problem is, there still is that hesitancy on the defensive side of the ball with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. We talked about Bill Belichick being extended when I did my NFL recap on Tuesday. I did not agree with it. I think New England needs to move off Mac Jones. I think he's capable. I don't think he's special. I think they need to just reset for a year. All what the Colts did when they went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. Reset, get a new voice in that building, and restart the new New England era. With that being said, Bill Belichick is a 9.5-point dog, is a lot of points. But again, I could see this game a lot like Rams Cowboys, a lot like Bills Bucks, going 2 separate ways. I could see Miami beating New England handedly by 20 points. I could also see New England keeping this a touchdown game and covering it, which is why I'm not confident in the spread here. I'm going to take Miami to win the game, but I'm not betting the game. Next game, we got Jags at the Steelers. Now, in this game, I am going to go ahead. I am taking Jacksonville -2.5. I'm laying it on the road. I trust Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, and this offense more than I do Mike Tomlin and Kenny Pickett. We all know Mike Tomlin's a great defensive coach. We know what he's done this year in Pittsburgh. They only put up 24 points against the Rams, and a lot of it was rushing. Kenny Pickett's a very good fourth quarter quarterback who can make plays in low-scoring games. But I think Doug Peterson, offensive coach, we saw Jacksonville Thursday night against the Saints. They're starting to get their offense moving. Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, those weapons to go with Travis Etienne. I just think the Steelers have a tough day at home. Jacksonville, a little more time to prepare coming off the Thursday night game. I think they come in. I think they win by at least a field goal. Tough game, probably like a 6-7 point game. Steelers play them tough throughout. In the end, I think Jacksonville's the better football team. They walk away from Pittsburgh, who I have best betted a lot this year. I'm going the other way. It's seeming like the Pittsburgh Steelers have been 2.5-point dogs almost every single week this week. This week, I'm going the other way. Jags -2.5. Next game, I'm taking the Colts -1.5. Now, I don't feel extraordinary positive about it, considering that the Gardner Minshew played great against the Browns last week, and we all know what that usually means. Gardner Minshew is going to have a bad game, and he is going up against the Saints defense. And last year, when New Orleans came to Philly, Shane Steichen, offensive coordinator for the Eagles at the time, Gardner Minshew started in replace of Jalen Hurts. The Eagles at that time could not move the ball. So I'm a little bit weary about this bet, but I just trust Shane Steichen, Gardner Minshew, Jonathan Taylor, that coaching staff, that offensive line, just a hairy bit more than Dennis Allen and Derek Carr and the Saints, who, with the Chris Olave news this week, with him getting arrested for speeding and everything going on, it just seems like there's turmoil in that Saints organization, and I don't know what the hell is going on in that NFC South. It's a weird division. It's a bad division. I think the Colts take advantage of the Saints' distraction. I think that they'll end up winning this game and obviously covering the only 1.5 point spread. If it was 3 or 4, I may not take it, but I think the number here is what gives value to this bet. Atlanta at Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's going to start Will Levis, and then Malik Willis is going to play as well. Tennessee is playing musical chairs with their quarterback, which I said they were going to do all year long. I said Tennessee was going to need to be in a reboot mode. They just got rid of, again, Kevin Byard to Philadelphia. Reportedly, Derrick Henry is on the trade block. So we're going to be looking at this Tennessee team, I think, a lot different for the back half of the season. I'm going to take Atlanta to win this game, but I don't know if I could ever bet the Atlanta Falcons. Even at 2.5 here, we don't know what's going on still with Bijan Robinson. He reportedly had an illness last week that Arthur Smith and co. did not, translate to the media. You have Tyler Algier, you have Cordero Patterson. They're using running backs and tight ends. They're not even using Drake London, who, is probably their best offensive weapon outside of Bijan Robinson. Atlanta's just a weird team that I like their pieces besides the quarterback on offense. I'm not a big fan of Desmond Ridder at all. Their defense is not good. If Tennessee wants to, they can hand it off to Derrick Henry. Will they be able to cover Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins? I don't know how the hell this game's going to go. It's hard to bet this game for me. This is a pretty bad game. It is an Arthur Smith revenge game, though, as the former Tennessee offensive coordinator, now Atlanta head coach, goes back to Tennessee. And the fact that this is in Tennessee worries me a little bit for the Falcons. I'm going to pick the Falcons. Again, there's no way in hell I bet this game. I was thinking about taking Carolina +3. Bryce Young coming off a bye, Carolina looking to get their first win. But then I realized D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans are also coming off their bye. I think that could be troublesome for Bryce Young and the Panthers. I may still be the only Bryce Young fan in the world. No matter if they don't have a win or not, I think Bryce Young is still going to be a very good NFL quarterback. I think they need to go in the offseason, get some offensive linemen, and get some receivers because their defense is pretty good. They may sell off Jeremy Chin, who's a safety. I don't really care, as you know, about safety. I think it's sort of the last position you build on your defense. If it's your only weakness, like what the Eagles had, perfectly okay to go out and get a versatile to safety like Kevin Byard. But you need corners. You need defensive linemen. Carolina's got Brian Burns. They got Derek Brown. They got some good linebackers. They need to rebuild that defensive back room again to go on with some receivers. C.J. Stroud's looked better than Bryce Young to this point. I think this is a fascinating game. I think Frank Reich, coming off a bye, has a plan. And I think this is the easiest and most winnable game yet on Carolina's schedule. I think Houston struggles. I think the Panthers' defense keeps them in the game. Again, I'm not going to bet because I don't feel as confident. This might be hard overhead because I'm a big fan of Bryce Young, but I got Carolina upsetting the Houston Texans. Now, I'm going to actually take Minnesota -1.5 against Green Bay. Could Kirk Cousins have a bad game against the Packers? Absolutely, and it's a divisional game. And you guys know I don't like taking division games for bets. But from what I've seen out of Jordan Love, I just can't. I mean, I just think Minnesota is going to win this game. Brian Flores, we know, is a very good NFL defensive coordinator. And as I said Monday, when he was in Miami, it took his Dolphins' defense over the years 6, 7, 8 weeks to gel. They were very good in the second half. Minnesota now begins a stretch where they play the likes of Chicago and they play the Saints, and they played some very bad teams that they could win and get on a roll and get back in this NFC North. One of those games is this weekend. Green Bay is not very good. Jordan Love is not the quarterback of the future. I think the low number again here helps me because unless they win by 1, which is a rarity in the NFL, Minnesota is going to cover. Even if it's by a last-second field goal, which feels like the Vikings always seem to play, Minnesota wins the game. I'm betting them here -1.5. KC at Denver. We saw how Denver played KC 2 weeks ago. And I always struggle with, can you beat a team twice in 3 weeks and can you do it dominantly? And the way Denver has played against Kansas City, I think Sean Payton is going to have these guys ready. There is a chance here Kansas City covers. They win by 9 or 10. I don't think it's going to be a blowout for the whole game. There's also a chance that Denver, loses by 7 or less, and they do cover. So again, very fringy line here, which one I'm not going to bet it, but I think the Chiefs ultimately win the game. It's another case of I really love the money line pick here. Don't like the spread pick here really at all. Baltimore at Arizona. Now, Baltimore is favored by 8.5. They probably should cover, though 8.5 really does feel like a big number the way that Arizona plays in the first half. We know Arizona cannot hang with teams in the second half. The only question here is, does Baltimore, after stopping Detroit last week, do they come out a little bit flat like some teams do when they come off a big victory, don't play well in the first half? By chance, do they barely cover? Do they win by 9 or 10? This is another situation where, again, Baltimore's going to win. Lamar Jackson's going to play well. Arizona's heading to the number 1 pick. Who knows what they do with Kyler Murray? That's a conversation down the line. But in the end, the biggest question about this game is just like the Kansas City game we just mentioned. Does Baltimore cover? I'm not as confident enough to say that they do because, again, I think Arizona plays great in the first half. There's other good value on the board, which is why, again, I'm not going to best bet this game. Browns at Seattle. Now, I actually really like the Seattle side here at -3. I'm not going to best bet it because Seattle's offensive line has not been great this year. And Geno Smith, my partner over at Championship Rings, Josh Unger, he loves Geno Smith. But as I have been arguing with him, Geno Smith has not had a great year playing quarterback for the Seahawks. We don't know DK Metcalf's status, and he's going up against a historically good Browns defense. If only they can get the production out of the quarterback position. And again, it's hard to bet this game because we don't know. Is it going to be Deshaun Watson? Is it going to be, PJ Walker? What's the status of Jerome Ford? Is it going to be on and Pierre Strong in the backfield? So there's just too many unknowns. I do think it's going to be really tough for this Browns team, no matter who the quarterback is, because they don't move the ball offensively. So in Seattle, which is going to be a very hard environment, obviously, to play, the Seahawks have a good defense. The question is going to be, can a Browns defense that got beat up last week by Gardner Minshew, Shane Steichen, and the Indianapolis Colts, if it wasn't for Myles Garrett having the game of his career, Indianapolis probably does win that game, and the Browns did get some help from officiating. But as I said last week, every team gets help, and every team gets bailed out, and every team gets wronged by officiating every single week. It just depends on when the call is and if you can overcome the bad officiating or the good officiating, depending on the week. So credit to the Browns for doing that. I think it's going to be tough going into Seattle. I got the Seahawks winning. But again, with the Browns quarterback controversy, if you will, I cannot best bet this game. A game I will best bet, my one dog of the week. I'm taking Cincinnati. I think San Francisco, I said it last night at Championship Rings. I think they're going to be fine. There's going to be a point where everyone's going to say, oh, Brock Purdy's going to prove himself this week against the Bengals. The Niners are going to come out. They're going to blow out Cincinnati. I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, the Bengals coming off a bye, they're getting healthier. San Francisco on a short week, maybe Joe Mixon gets more involved. They protect Joe Burrow. And I think Cincinnati exposes the San Francisco secondary like what Minnesota did with Kirk Cousins, with Jordan Addison. The Zach Taylor offense is a lot like the Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay type offenses that give San Francisco trouble. Of course, Press Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, Zach Taylor, the head coach in Cincinnati, Kevin O'Connell, they all came from that Sean McVay coaching tree down there, which obviously does give San Francisco trouble defensively. I think Cincinnati, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, the weapons they have. They're able to run the football with Joe Mixon. They take down San Francisco in Santa Clara. I'm taking them plus the 5.5. Now, this game, Bears at the Chargers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if the Chargers do not cover this game, because people now have film on Tyson Bagent, and as I said, going into Tuesday's show, when I did my recap, I have this no film theory. If you've been listening to me for a long time here on Brandon's World, and that theory is NFL coaches, all they do for 100 hours a week, 20 hours a day, 5 days a week is watch tape. So when guys don't have tape on people, and by tape I mean NFL tape of the same year, like Tyson Bagent, who won the Division II equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, they don't know how to stop them. Now teams have tape on them. The Chargers, Brandon Staley, we know is a defensive coach. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James. They should be able to get after this Chicago Bears offense and essentially shut them out if the Chargers are who they should be. Justin Herbert should have a very good game, even without Mike Williams. Maybe this is the game that Quentin Johnson gets going to go with Josh Palmer. Can't trust Brandon Staley. If the Chargers lose this game, as I said last night in our championship ring show, Brandon Staley might as well put up his Howard Anno real estate sign and get out of Los Angeles. The Chargers, with that roster, cannot lose this game Sunday night. Now, Raiders at the Lions. It's a big spread. So, again, I think that there is potential here for better numbers on the board. I understand why you would want to feel tempted to bet Detroit here, minus 8.5, because they got embarrassed by Baltimore on Sunday. Usually good teams that get embarrassed bounce back. My one hesitation here is Vegas has been a big game player. They may not play very well, but they oftentimes do play well in prime time. We don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know if it's going to be Garoppolo. We don't know if it's going to be Hoyer. We don't know if it's going to be O'Connell. Devontae Adams against that Lions secondary. I think the Raiders, to go on with Hunter Renfrow, Meyer, the tight end. We talk about the Raiders' offensive pieces a lot. They have good offensive pieces. They match up well with the Lions secondary. I think the Raiders, who were embarrassed last week at Chicago, they play better staying on the East Coast here, taking on the Detroit Lions. I don't think the Lions cover. I think that they will win the game. Again, there's another Bucs-Bills scenario. There's another Chiefs-Broncos scenario. It's another Ravens-Cardinals scenario. There are scenarios this week where, Tampa gets blown out, Denver gets blown out, Arizona gets blown out, Vegas gets blown out, Chicago gets blown out. But there's other sides of the coin where it's like, what would they do this? And they turn the ball over, and we don't trust the coach. This game could be closer than people think, and that's why I'm not betting this game, though I really do like the Detroit side of it. So again, my money line predictions for week 8. Buffalo over Tampa, Philly over Washington, Dallas over the Rams, Jets over Giants, Miami over New England, Jacksonville over Pittsburgh, Indy over the Saints, Atlanta over Tennessee, Carolina over Houston, Minnesota over Green Bay, Kansas City over Denver, Baltimore over Arizona, Seattle over Cleveland, Cincinnati over San Francisco, Chargers over Chicago, and Detroit over Las Vegas. My 5 best bets for week 8 of the 2023 NFL season are Jets -3 in the Battle of New York against the Giants. Vikings go on the road. They cover the 1.5 against the Green Bay Packers. Jacksonville on the road. They cover 2.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Indianapolis at home -1.5 against the Saints. And my one dog this week, Cincinnati, goes into Santa Clara. They take out the Niners. Like that clip from the Brandon's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.